All right, we have a few questions coming in, but if you have them, get them in now, because I'm going to kill a lot of time talking about other stuff today.
Adam says, you don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. Actually, I can go home either, and in Eric's case, he can't go home from Las Vegas. Sorry about that, man.
Shucks.
Maybe your family could come visit you in Vegas.
Maybe. I don't know. I mean, do you really want family to visit you in Vegas? Is that what you go to Vegas for? Family visits? No.
Maybe catch a show or something.
You go to Vegas to get drunk and die in the arms of a bunny ranch girl. So I hear anyway. Never actually been to Vegas, so I couldn't tell you if that's true or not.
Oh, disease. That was that word association you just threw at me. I was like, disease. That's what I'm at.
See, because like for like my only Vegas thing is obviously leaving Las Vegas, the movie.
Not the hangover?
And no. Hangover is a very, very distant second to leaving Las Vegas. Nicolas Cage just being a drunk, degenerate lunatic for 2 hours is wonderful.
See, when I go to Think New York, I go to like Die Hard 3 or something. So is that
Yeah,
about the same?
yeah, absolutely. That's totally valid because New York looks exactly the same as it did in 1999.
Yes, exactly.
Nothing has changed. Everything is exactly the same. You still have cranky guys in the bodega chasing kids on bikes. It's great. Great. Great
Uh,
stuff.
Look there's actually SQL Server questions. It's amazing.
No. Oh, we don't want those.
Looks like you're going to be busy this time. Oh, look, and there's replication questions. If you like replication questions that you want Eric to answer, please
I
feel
don't
free.
know why we get so many replication questions because we do not have a great batting average for answering replication questions. Most of the time, we're like, no, go ask on Stack Exchange because people who know about replication live there. I have never touched replication. I can't answer your replication questions. I do not know.
Come
Replication,
on.
SSIS, ASRS, still haven't opened any of them. Will
Come
never open any of
on.
them.
Don't be a coward. You could do this.
It's not cowardice. I have other things to do that will actually help people and not lead to their misery and downfall. All right, it's
Magic time.
12:15, right? Is it? Is it
Magic.
12:15? Is it 12:15 your time too?
Sure is. No one's
All
saying,
right.
no, it's 9:15. No, it's
Yeah. Well,
10:15.
wake up at a
Come
normal
on.
time, you hippies.
It's lunchtime, baby.
Yeah, buddy. As soon as this is over, I'm gonna stuff my face for 15 minutes and then hop on a client call.
Word to your moms.
Yeah, buddy. All right. So, SQL questions. You want to read some questions? You want me to read some questions?
We'll let you go ahead and swing and miss at these replication questions. That'd be
All right,
amazing.
go ahead. Okay. First one, I already said take it to Stack Exchange because I have no idea what's going on there. Graham has a question where he gives some context. Thankfully, finally, someone gives context. Doing server instance upgrade from 2008 R2 to 2012. Already know. Already know. NO, probably PE, nope, no, don't do it. And the thing at the bottom is that he found a bunch of check constraints that were untrusted, and yes, he's asking if this is something that a senior, not a junior DBA would be responsible for. If you want to be a senior DBA, you will stand up for the fact that in-place upgrades are idiotic. Don't do them. Stop it. Fresh hardware, because you have no backup plan, right? This is something that a senior DBA will let everyone know about. If you upgrade your instance in place and something goes wrong, you don't have an instance anymore. If you build a new instance and you set up log shipping or mirroring, or you just do a backup and restore during a maintenance window to get your application over there, you have a backup plan in case anything goes horribly wrong. Rule number one of being a senior DBA, always have a backup plan. Keep a pair of pants in your pants.
Yeah, don't be a developer. Have a backup plan.
Even Richie uses GitHub. Even Richie.
I check in once a week. Come on.
It's good enough. All right. Next question. Our Tempdb is hosted on a SAN. How can I tell if it's the bottleneck? Oh boy. A couple of different ways. One, you can see, you can check your wait stats and see if page latch stuff in Tempdb is going crazy, and you can see if if Tempdb is even a point of contention within SQL Server, and then you can always check the DM file stats DMV to see what kind of read and write lag you have on your data files and log files. So if you're having trouble writing to the files, if you have latency writing to the files or latency reading from those files, you can check that out and see if it is indeed a bottleneck there. Okay, that's my answer on that. I mean, I should probably start answered Waverly.
Tip tap.
I'm not good at typing. Ever.
Can't do the typey type?
I can do a little typey type, not a lot of typey type. Let's see, let's scroll on down. This question looks like I'm going to read it. Currently, we have a common two-node cluster with SAN running SQL 2014 Enterprise instance for HA. Let's call it S1. We will create another VM SQL to 2104. What year are you from, Time Traveler? Instance S2 with its own drives and add it to S1. Can we create availability groups? And so, good God, man. You need to put that down. If these are your questions about availability groups and failover clusters, you need to put the availability group down. You're going to have a very hard time managing that availability group. And if anything bad happens to that availability group, you better pray to the Google gods that your answer lies somewhere readily available, or else you are hosed. You should probably step back and use a technology that's a bit more manageable by people who don't need to ask availability group questions during a 30-minute webcast. Log shipping or mirroring, because you are not prepared for the availability group hell that you are going to face.
So, Erik, tell me how you really feel.
I feel like Microsoft hands out these shiny brochures and pamphlets, like retirement home style, like send your data to shady availability group villages. And everyone's just like, cool, I'm just going to have availability groups. It's going to be great. And then they start using them, and then you see like the string of downvoted questions on Stack Exchange. Like, no, this is not a real question about computers. Stop it. Use something else. Because they're hard. The brochure makes it look like, yeah, you just set it up, because they're dead easy to set up. I can set them up on my own. Like, I can do that. It's so easy. I can do it. But then as soon as you start having to like troubleshoot them, like you have a problem with them, and you want to figure out where to take backups, and then you realize you have to take DBCC check DB everywhere, and just like all the other stuff that comes along with them, and people are just thoroughly unprepared for the amount of administrative work that goes into an availability group. It's not just like, like setting them up or getting them kicked off is hard. That's pretty easy, but geez, as soon as, stuff starts failing, that's when people run to the hills. Yeah.
So the TLDR and availability groups is it's easy-ish to set up, but there's a lot of gotchas once you start getting into it.
Yeah. So, I would really try to set things up in a development environment first, in a non-production environment, and see how that goes, and see what, issues arise and what, issues you can create on your own, and just sort of figure out if this is actually what you want to do, if this is the right solution for you. Because most people just dive right in saying, oh, we got availability groups, we're going to go for it. But they don't actually do any like kicking of the tires, or like, they don't do a test drive on the technology before they go into it. So, mirroring is deprecated but still supported through 2016. Log shipping ain't going no ways. You have options other than availability groups that, people without advanced SQL degrees can manage fairly easily. Mostly just don't try to use synchronous mirroring. That can be tough too. Right, JH, mysterious JH. Parameter sniffing. When using option recompile at the end of a slow secondary ad hoc query with criteria, will it affect mess up stored plan anything else on first initial good? Yeah, so secondary. I don't quite understand your question. You're asking if you have a good plan in cache, and then you run a query that gets a bad plan and use recompile, will that keep the bad plan out of cache? If you can clarify that, we might be able to go somewhere with it. I'm not exactly sure what you're getting to there. Let's see, going on down the list.
A lot of caching going on in that question.
A lot of caching. Cache is king. Ted Locke says that Anchorage Airport for 24 hours is much worse than Dallas. Doug Lane is not here to defend Alaska, so I am not going to let that fly. I'm sure that Anchorage Airport is lovely. Let's see. We had a replication question, and then he left. Okay.
We were going to answer it anyway.
No, maybe.
No.
I'm not going to read the answer. I'm not going to read the question, but I'm going to answer it. Just kidding. I'm not going to do either one.
What is this, Jeopardy?
Going to answer in the form of silence.
Hello, darkness, my old friend.
There we go. So, Tim Hughes, or just Timmy Tim as I call him on the streets. Can you explain why different query plan would get created for the same SQL statement and parameter values when using SP execute SQL versus running the SQL with parameters in SSMS, even when doing DBCC free proc cache before running each? Well, golly and gosh, Tim, if you are using local variables in Management Studio, then you could totally end up with a weird execution plan because SQL estimates things for local variables a bit differently than it does for parameterized SQL. Parameterized SQL will, of course, use the statistics histogram, and it will happily create a query plan based on the cardinality estimate from that. If you're in SSMS and you're using local variables, it will do some fuzzy math based on the rows in the table and the density vector. This thingy fuzzy. It'll do some fuzzy math. It'll multiply those, and it'll say, this is your cardinality estimate, which is usually wrong. Horribly wrong. So that's one possible reason why, if you have more questions on that, I would head on over to Stack Exchange, where you can paste in your code and show everyone what it's doing and the execution plans involved. Gosh. If only there were an easy way to share execution plans.
Oh, man. Wow,
Wouldn't that be a killer product?
That would be interesting if we were able to do that.
Web-based way to... We should talk to Brent about that.
I may have to start thinking about that.
That'd be a good thing to think about.
So would that be one of those Aaron Sommerskard white papers you could take a look at for that question?
Sure. There may be some more information on that somewhere on the internet.
With that,
Erlen, yeah. Let me actually pull up the.
Fast in SSMS, slow on the server, or something like that.
Hold your horses. Probably. There we go. So, Mr. Erlen Sommerskog. I'll add into that. Erlen Sommerskog has a great article called "Slow." That cattail is weird, man. Basically called "Slowing the Application Fast in SSMS," which delves into some query plan mysteries about why things get weird when they do get weird. Let's see. Erik Swigum. I don't think that's a real name, but I'm going to answer this question anyway. Erik Swigum has a question. When you go to Server Properties Connections, under Remote Server Connections, the checkbox Allow Remote Connections to the Server, what is that exactly? Can I uncheck it in a live production environment? What would happen? Dude. No. No, don't. Don't uncheck that in a live production environment. I'm pretty sure that would classify as an outage. That is a forced error. Do not check that box. Do not pass go. Yikes.
Well, I mean, let's just put it this way. I mean, if we had no idea what that is, what would you do? If you had a checkbox, there's no documentation on it, how would you go about approaching seeing how that worked?
I would go on Google and I would say, I would put in quotes, allow remote connections to this server, management studio or SQL Server or something like that, add in some buzzwords, and I would see what comes up, and I would see what Microsoft had to say, because perhaps there is documentation about that would lead me to not uncheck that box in a live production environment willy-nilly.
I mean, the next step would be what? Go into a dev environment, unclicking it, running some tests up against it, see what happens?
Perhaps try to connect to that server after unchecking it.
Yes, because my guess is that they will not be able to connect.
Yeah, so that's a lot like turning off your server without turning off your server. I would avoid that like the plague. Like
well, all the folks running on the local would be fine, right?
Yeah, so anyone just, RDPing into the server, opening up SSMS, hacking away queries, they're good to go. Anyone who wants to the funny thing is, I bet if you uncheck that and you click OK, I bet it would, if you were doing that remotely, it would sever your connection and you wouldn't be able to recheck it.
Oh, it sounds like we could have some fun in the lab.
Maybe the next DBA days we can do that. Just kidding. Not doing that. Don't do it.
Yeah, little do we know, we removed all the remote connections on Brent's server. Let's see what happens next.
Yeah, let's watch Brent's server stop responding. Thomas Strike asks, do you think working on a security plus certification as an adjunct to my SQL knowledge is a better way to go, or should I be more focused on Azure and AWS for adding some job security through knowledge? Richie, what do you think about the cloud, or the cloud, as they say in Canada?
I like the cloud, although at this very moment I'm very frustrated with the cloud because I'm running into some problems with one of my VPCs right now. But
go on.
I think, my personal opinion, there's no such thing as job security. There's only what you know. And I don't think there's anything as bad knowledge, but I think that there's better knowledge. And certification, depending on where you want to go. The security certification is fine. It's just not going to get you any jobs. It may get you into a door, but that in itself is not going to get you any new jobs. Maybe it will get you a bonus at work, but probably not. What you'll get is the knowledge that you obtain from getting the certification. And at the end of the day, you have a piece of paper, and probably about $500 or so, whatever it takes to take the test. The cloud, in my opinion, is where everyone's going to go. It's just so easy to get up and running at scale. I was able to spin up a VPC yesterday and get a virtual private cloud, and get a whole network up and running, and me as a developer with very little networking knowledge, and it's dead simple. The cloud is all about the little gotchas, is what you can and cannot do inside of the cloud. That is where the keys to the knowledge lies. I think that you probably need a little bit of both, but I think you need to sit down and say, where do I want my career to go, and then make a plan out for that.
Good points, good points. From my perspective, I think security is just too damn hard to mix in with SQL knowledge. Like, it's cool if you can run out, grab Denny Cherry's book, Securing SQL Server, and you can have a pretty good idea about security from a SQL Server perspective. But then if you want to run out and then learn, the vast surface area, the vast swaths of security stuff that can go on outside of that, that's great knowledge to have, but I wouldn't. If I wanted to focus on security, it would probably be in a situation where I am stepping away from SQL Server to focus solely on security, because security is so big and so hard and so vast that piling that on top of SQL Server is just not intuitive to me. SQL Server plus Azure or AWS is much more intuitive to me, because that your SQL Server can run there in either one. I mean, not like literally there, but you can run SQL Server in either one. There are different trade-offs and gotchas and backs and forths that you have using SQL Server there, but that's for you to read about later. So I would, if you're planning on continuing with SQL Server, I would also learn SQL Server in the cloud. If you're planning on learning security because you're stepping away from SQL Server, then by all means, go with security. But, security within SQL Server is probably its own subject, which you can, read about at length anywhere.
I mean, no offense to security people, but it seems like there are a lot of broken people out there that are security people. They start getting into it, and it's like, oh my gosh, there's nothing that's secure that's out there. And it's just this wide, eye-opening, aspect to there's nothing safe. Once it's out there, it's out there.
Yeah. I actually no, I'm not even gonna tell this story. I don't want to get anyone in trouble. But I've heard things from people who work in the security sector, basically along the lines of all your passwords are useless. So there's that.
Yeah, but I mean they're thinking at a different level rather than us trying to hack in and blah blah blah. They're thinking of all these different vectors to get in and whatnot. And I think once you get into that, you start thinking at a different level than the normal run-of-the-mill IT person.
Yeah, that's very true. All right, let's get away from this. Heather has a question. Wow, it's 12:34 already. Heather has a question. I need to add a largest data file to a database that has frequent log backups. But getting message 3023, back file manip encrypt must be serialized. Would it be better to add a small file and increase it? I don't want to interrupt the log backups. My first question to you is, do you have instant file initialization enabled? Because that makes adding large data files pretty quick. Instant file initialization is, of course, when you have the perform volume maintenance tasks privilege assigned to your SQL Server service account. So that you can just go and hug a whole bunch of disk space and say, I'm going to use this eventually. I'm not going to zero it all out, because that's really the slow part of adding data files, is the zeroing out of stuff. So if you have IFI enabled and you're still getting that, I would probably request a maintenance window where I can pause log backups for, a minute or two, maybe 5 minutes, add the data file at the size I want, and then gone and resume log backups. Otherwise, your idea to add a small file and increase it is probably palatable, but if you can mix that all in, then great. If not, you're gonna need that maintenance window.
Awkward silence.
Yeah, that's what I feel. That's how I feel about that. Cool. Nate Johnson has a question about big data and business intelligence. Nothing. BI, nada. No thoughts. No. You can go to the BA con. Just kidding. You can't go to that.
Not anymore. That's not a thing.
All right.
So what's a question? The question is, because I've had thoughts on this stuff. What do you guys recommend for a company that's about 5 to 10 years behind the curve, just beginning to understand that we need business intelligence / data warehouse type of thing to help drive the business decisions? You need to ask what questions you want answered.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. This isn't a technology thing. This is a business thing. The business has to sit down and say, what questions would we love answered? And then then the data team needs to go out and say, how do we go out and answer these questions? Can we do it with our normal data, or do we need something that's better? And whether that's a star schema or a data warehouse or Tableau or whatever Microsoft BI stuff, Power BI, that's irrelevant. The question is what questions does the business need answered so they could do X, Y, Z things in the future. So it needs to start with the business. If it's a data warehouse data initiative that's not start with the business, it's probably going to end up failing because no one's going to adopt it.
I agree.
Answer the question. Wow.
Good for you. That means you get paid with money this week. You do not get a bag of circus peanuts.
Thank God that life money. Nobody's taking that. The game of life money. I'm going to the grocery store, but I got $100,000 right here, and they're like, no.
I've got 1,400 query bucks. What do I buy with this?
But Brent said.
Shucks. I owe my soul to the company store.
I wonder why Erik Larson's art was on my cash dollars I got from Brent. I just really, I should have guessed that it wasn't legal tender. It's crazy.
40 Brent bucks. All right. Faisal says, we are getting a dedicated integrity checking server. I want to make sure we have it set up as best as possible. Obviously want to maximize throughput. We'll be spreading Tempdb and data file across as many spindles as we can, the logs on a lower spindle count. Is there anything that we need to take into account before we install SQL Server? We have a setup guide that is applicable to any SQL Server, or any, well, except for like SharePoint ones, but who cares about those? Probably Dynamics too. But we have a setup guide. If you go to brentozar.com slash, I don't know, I think it's the first under the first responder kit site somewhere. Let me grab the link for that. First responder kit.
Awkward silence.
There we go. Yes. If you go to brentozar.com/responder, you can get the first responder kit, which has our setup guide and checklist in there, which will walk you through all the stuff you need to do from soup to nuts, setting up and validating a SQL Server, install, environment, all that good stuff. Just because it's only for offloading DBCC CheckDB doesn't mean the normal rules don't apply to it.
Here's a question by Raul. Is it good practice to run the upgrade advisor before performing an actual SQL Server instance? Well, I think we know what you meant, Raul. Erik needs to see with his own eyes first.
Yeah, I do.
His good eye.
It didn't help.
Bad eye's not good.
Let me show you my stroke face, dear. It's a good practice to run the upgrade advisor before performing an accutal. I've never actually run the upgrade advisor because I'm crazy like that. But it probably is a good practice to do it. If I were to
do an upgrade,
if I were to think about it, I would probably want to do that. But in fairness to me, most of the upgrades that I've done have been on SQL boxes that were hosting third-party vendor apps where they had already done the testing ahead of time. So I didn't have to do that sort of thing. All I had to do was get the okay from the vendor that, hey, we have tested our product on SQL version XXX, and you are good to upgrade on that. So aside from some in-house code stuff like CLR or other things that I had kicked developers to work on doing, I've never actually had to run the upgrade advisor on a piece of in-house software. It's always been third-party stuff. If you're doing in-house stuff, it's not vendor certified or anything like that, then yeah, I'd probably run it before moving anything over.
All right. So what replication question you want to answer now, Erik?
None. None ever. JH, does performance improve by placing Tempdb data files onto a different drive than its Tempdb log files, even within a virtual environment? Probably not if it's on a SAN. They're all using the same sort of shared pool of disks anyway. I would not go crazy on that. Kyle Johnson has a long SQL Server licensing question, but we are short on time. So I will refer you over to Microsoft and/or whoever you purchase SQL Server from to answer those questions, because different people get different deals and discounts and stuff if they buy a bunch of stuff. So your mileage may vary on what happens. Let's see. I don't know. You pick a question. I'm sick of picking questions.
Oh, small shop. Accidental DBA here. If a SQL Server, yeah, do it. You draw the short straw. Congratulations.
Hey.
If a SQL Server is in Windows authentication mode, what happens if the domain controllers become unavailable for some reason? Would the cached credentials on my workstation still allow me to connect?
You know what? That has never happened to me, and I don't know.
You stumped them! You stumped the most, Erik!
I've just never run into that. Let's see. So what I can tell you from some experience is that if you have SQL agent jobs that are running under an Active Directory account and the Active Directory account is disabled, that job will usually stop working. So following some sort of logic, I think that if your your AD controller goes down, that you may have trouble, but the extent of that trouble I'm not exactly sure on.
Sounds like it's a good thing to get into the cloud, set up a lab, domain controller, SQL Server, bring it down, see what happens.
Or just even set up a Hyper-V environment on your desktop or laptop or whatever kind of top you have. I have one on mine.
I have my head in the cloud today, man. I've been cloudy.
You do. I'm not opposed to the cloud, but there was a very funny post recently by a Microsoft PFE, that's a premier field engineer, and even he had limited Azure developer credits. Like he doesn't even have free reign to Azure his tail off. So that's weird too.
Poor guy.
Yeah, can you imagine?
Poor guy.
You work for Microsoft and your Azure access is limited.
All right, last one. What are your thoughts about being a multi-platform, aka Polyglot DBA?
AKA Polyglot. You know, I like exploring other database platforms. I like looking at Oracle and Postgres stuff because I find their implementations of SQL interesting. As far as actually doing the production work on them, if you're going to be a polyglot, I would want to be a limited polyglot. I would probably want to specialize in one platform, but be able to back up DBAs from another platform in their tasks. So, learn as much as you can, learn as much as you want. Those are my two preferred platforms if you want to learn something else and, help other DBAs out on that until you get your skills up to par with, production DBAs in a different platform. That's totally up to you, but, I'm pretty cool with it.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea, and not just the relational side either. But there's a whole slew of databases that are becoming very popular in the NoSQL world, like Mongo, Cassandra, and all those of the ilk. And it's probably a good idea to start getting understanding on how those things work as well. So I heard last night I was at the ballpark because there was a tech night at the ballpark because that's what we do here in South Florida.
Wow, check you out.
And so I was talking with someone from a large software organization. I'm not going to say who, but they're moving their entire platform from SQL Server over to Mongo. And I giggled inside because they have relational data and they're going to a non-relational store. But I've used both and I understand the pros and cons of both. So if you could talk intelligently about both platforms, then you can kind of educate other people on the team, and it's just not a buzzword bingo type thing. So definitely want to take a look, see what everyone else is doing, and if you want to get deeper, go do what Erik has suggested. I think that's a great way to go.
All right, that looks like 12:46 to me, so I think we are done here for today. Thank you, everyone, for showing up, asking questions. Sorry we didn't get to everything. There's always next week. There's only two of us, so things tend to go a little bit slower.
Yeah, and then maybe in Ozar, you'll have an Ozar sighting next week, which would be pretty cool.
Maybe, if he doesn't get eaten by Smokey the Bear.
That would be pretty horrible. We wouldn't want that.
No.
Well, the company will go on because Ernie lives. So
that's true. The company is in Ernie's name, so
yeah.
We all just do what Ernie says anyway.
Pretty much.
All right. See you in chat.
Peace.